Thank you. Witnesses in opposition, proceed, please, when you're ready.
My name is Barbara Loe Fisher. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this provide this reference testimony on behalf of more than 100,000 supporters of the nonprofit charity, the National Vaccine Information Center, living in California and other states. NVIC was founded in 1982 to prevent vaccine injuries and deaths through public education and to defend the informed consent ethic in health policy and law. In 2014, California ranked an enviable number 4 among all states with the lowest infant mortality rate, a major indicator of good child health. Only 2.5% of children entering kindergarten in 2014 had a personal belief exemption, and many of these children are vaccinated but use a modified vaccine schedule. SB 277 eliminates the personal belief vaccine exemption, while federal health officials tell doctors to deny medical exemptions to 99.99% of children. The federal government shields the drug industry and doctors from vaccine injury lawsuits and directs doctors to give children triple the numbers of vaccinations they got 30 years ago. Several hundred new vaccines are being created, and this bill facilitates the mandating of new vaccines without your vote. It fails to value the health and educational needs of vulnerable children, for whom the risks of vaccination have been or will turn out to be 100%. No doctor in California or public health official at the CDC in Atlanta can accurately predict whether or not a child will suffer brain inflammation, injury, or death after vaccination. The $3 billion already paid out to vaccine casualties under the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act is confirmation of that fact. While we are all born equal under the law, we are not all born the same, and we do not all respond the same way to pharmaceutical products. As the Institute of Medicine has repeatedly stated in published reports, some of us are genetically and biologically more vulnerable to being harmed by vaccines, but doctors cannot accurately identify who we are because of large gaps in the vaccine safety science. The fact that science has not adequately defined who among us is at high risk for vaccine complications does not mean that our lives are less deserving of protection than those at high risk for the disease complications. The science is not clear. It is not settled. Health officials do not know how many vaccinated children and adults transmit infections to others without being diagnosed or reported, including to immune-compromised people. It is an illusion that severely immune-compromised children will not get sick if all the other children in school are vaccinated. California came face to face with this inconvenient truth last year when it became clear that 90% of child pertussis cases with vaccine records had been vaccinated. This year, 30% of measles cases with vaccine records had been vaccinated. The Disneyland measles outbreak, in which over half the cases were adults and only 18% were school children, ended quickly this year using successful disease control measures. This bill is not about measles or pertussis. It is about taking power away from mothers and fathers to make medical risk decisions for their minor children and handing it over to doctors to implement a one-size-fits-all policy with no personal accountability for the children who become casualties of that policy. It punishes parents with good reason to conclude their children are already vaccine injured or vulnerable to vaccine harm, but cannot find a doctor to acknowledge that and write a medical vaccine exemption. Most parents do not have the money to exercise or expertise to homeschool, and those at greatest risk for being denied an equal education guaranteed by the California Constitution are handicapped children requiring special education under civil rights laws. SB 277 will be expensive for the state to enforce and defend in court. Many parents refuse to violate their deeply held religious, spiritual, and conscientious beliefs that compel them to protect their children. The prospect of non-complying parents being charged with truancy and fined or potentially sent to jail if they cannot homeschool will foster mistrust and fear of health officials and the medical profession. As mothers and fathers, We love our children more than we thought we could love anyone. We nurture them throughout childhood so they can grow up to be productive members of society. We are personally responsible for their health, and we are the ones who care for them when they become sick and unable to care for themselves for any reason. The thousands of Californians who have come to Sacramento this year to participate in our democracy and testify against this bill are asking you to protect parental, civil, and human rights. The right of the state to tell parents what to do to their children's bodies ends where the right of parents to protect their children's lives begins. Please do not pass this unnecessary bill, which violates the human right to informed consent to medical risk-taking and denies equal protection and education to children in California.
Thank you. Next witness.